Hello, everybody. I'm going to give it just another moment here before I go ahead and get started. It's not quite noon, and we may have some people jump on right at noon. Everybody is muted at this point, but please feel free to unmute yourself if you have questions or you have comments, things like that. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I recognize that coming to a presentation on dating is probably pretty anxiety producing for a lot of people. So I'm not entirely surprised that all of you have your cameras off. Um, I can totally support that. I have no problem with that. But there will be things that I'll be asking for some participation about. So if you wouldn't mind putting those things in the chat, unless you want to unmute yourself, that would be really helpful. All right. So I want to welcome you all today. Dating today brings some mixed emotions. For some people, it's really energizing and super hopeful. And for other people, it is discouraging and overwhelming and can feel like burnout. Um, some people are like, it feels like my second part-time job. Um, all of that is really typical. I don't use the word normal because I always say normal is a setting on a dryer. There's no normal, there's typical. So I try and steer clear of that. This is really going to be a shame-free area. We got a couple of people coming in here. All right. This space is really shame-free and support-focused. I'm going to try and weave in some trauma-aware stuff. I'm also going to try and weave in some neurodiversity things. Everybody's brain processes things differently. Some people really need more structure. Some people really need less stimulus. Some people need super clear, nearly blunt kind of communication. It's all valid, okay? We're going to move at a steady pace, but hopefully at a kind pace. And so if you have a question or you don't understand something, please, please, please feel free to speak up and ask. All right. I said at the beginning, for some of you who came in just a couple of minutes, I recognize that you want to keep your screens off, and that's fine. But there will be some things that I'll be asking about. So if you please put things in the chat, that would be really helpful. All right, today we're going to talk about how dating has really changed, especially kind of objectively different since 2012 when apps really came on the scene. We're going to talk about how to use those apps mindfully. And then we're going to talk about some scripts and some strategies to hopefully help you with your confidence. But I would really, really, really invite people to think about this next hour together with curiosity instead of judgment. Okay. Judgment's not super helpful in all of this. Unless we're talking about some specific situations, and that's only for self. So invite curiosity. And I would invite curiosity for yourself today too. Okay. So speaking of self, the first part of this is that you really have to know yourself. Oops, I am still back in. There we go. There we go. Okay. Um, if you show up and you don't really know yourself, oops, Zoom slideshow, and you don't really know yourself, then um, it's probably not going to go as well as if you know yourself in some specific ways. So, if you don't have a piece of paper and a pen, you can grab one, or if you want to pop open another window on your screen, I've got some questions that I want you to think about and jot some answers down too. Okay. Uh, Lots of times we go into dating without a lot of self examination. And so you can get hung up on some questions sometimes, or sometimes you can even miss things altogether that you later had wished you talked about. So in this first activity, I'd really like you to jot down answers to these questions. And I'm going to go through these questions slowly. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to answer them for yourself. Jot down 2 or 3 things about this next question. What are your interests and hobbies? What's important to you in life? What are your values? Values are things that they can be characteristics about yourself, or they can be things that you do, the things that we value or the things that we do. All of this is going to come into play a little bit later, too. So, what are your non negotiables, right? If you're looking to date somebody and you absolutely do not want to date somebody who has children, uh, non negotiable, right? Uh, One of the things that you might value in life could be being respectful of people's time, right? And so tardiness may be something that is non negotiable for you. Dishonesty might be another thing, right? Jot down a couple of non negotiables. And then what information are you looking for when you're dating? Um, what kinds of imperfections? I mean, if you're looking for dating for a long-term partnership, right? What kind of imperfections can you live with? Um, what are some of the key things that you're looking for in dating? Um, Everything about dating is information, right? That may seem a little bit daunting, um, but again, if we're coming at this with curiosity, that can be fun. And then what's your goal of dating? Are you looking for just, somebody to go out and have a good time with? Or are you looking for something a little more serious? Or are you looking for something, say, as long-term commitment as marriage? I think knowing that information is really important. Um, it saves you from getting into something that maybe you don't want to get into. Okay, so now I'm going to ask if anybody might be willing to share anything that they've written down. I know it's early in the presentation. One of the things that I love about this, though, is that you might say something that might be helpful to somebody else. So if you're willing to share something about what you've written down, um, that would be wonderful. And like I said, you can unmute yourself and do that, or you're welcome to put that into the chat.
For me personally, I
Mm,
struggled with the last 2 questions because I don't think they're applicable for me.
okay.
I think that 2 people or however many people create a relationship and those terms within the relationship.
Mhm.
So it just is
Yeah.
dependent upon that
So,
bond, I guess.
yeah, I mean, it absolutely could be. If you don't have a starting point, though, right?
Right.
Then, like, if I were looking to date and I am very sex positive, very like open relationship, have no problem with any of that. But if you don't know what you're looking for in an end term, what's the goal, then you might wind up in something you don't want to be in. Does that
That's
make
fair.
sense?
Yeah, it
Okay,
does.
that's what I'm talking about with that. Yeah. And then with the information part, I'm assuming that was the other part that kind of the two questions at the end. Um, some people, speaking from a neurodivergent lens, some people cannot deal with people who chew with their mouth open, like can't have a meal with somebody, right? And so if that's a non-negotiable, right? If that's you're looking for information. If you're out on a date and somebody is chewing with their mouth open, you're probably not going to continue to date that person. Um, so those kinds of things.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything? Values include integrity, laughter, connection. Good. Looking for someone who's self-aware and growth-oriented. Great. Great. We're going to talk about that a little bit later too. So lovely. Okay. All right. So, dating today. Some things have kind of changed here. Um, like I said, 2012 is when apps kind of came on the scene. So, uh, if you were dating before that, and then maybe or in a relationship, this may feel really strange to you. Uh, that's okay. It's strange because um, of your nervous system. This is not exactly how we have dated up to now. Um, so, according to a poll that was done by Omnibus, and this was done in January of this year, 37% of adults are using apps right now. Okay. Most people aren't getting married until they're in their 20s or 30s. Um, and some people are not choosing to do that at all. Um, I also want to be really clear that the info about scams isn't really new information. It's just become easier with computers, presenting yourself catfishing, right, as someone that you're not. Um, older, younger, male, female, wealthy, not, there could be a lot of different things. Um, so we're going to talk about some ways to kind of help make sure that that's not happening. Um, also, depending on what your previous life looked like, you may be bringing in some things from past relationships that um, it's okay that that happens. We'll talk a little bit more about that too, but there may be some past relationship stuff around betrayal or being ghosted. Um, those leave a message with your nervous system again. So I want to normalize that. All right. Um, I want to also make sure that I add in here that the system of dating has changed. So if you're feeling like, gosh, I just don't know how to do this, or um, this feels really weird, you're not broken, you're not wrong. The system really changed, and it takes a little while for us to catch up to that. Uh-huh. It's not giving me anything all of a sudden. What happened here? Hmm. What happened? All of a sudden, I'm like, not is not responding to anything. Hmm. well. Yeah, exactly. My computer does not understand my needs. Um, ah, and I like that it seems like the other person's non-negotiables would be early needed information. Yeah, definitely. That is definitely true. Resume slideshow. I do not know why it is doing this. This is really wild. I've never had this happen before. Turn this down for just a second here. And open this up a little bit more. See if I can move to here instead. I don't want to give you guys all my notes. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that then. Nope. Guess I'm not. Okay. All right. We're going to go with this. All right. So we're here. Okay. So we're going to talk about apps now. Okay. And yes, you guys have all my notes. So you follow along, right? They can be super useful and super draining, right? They're running on algorithms. They learn your behavior. And that doesn't always equal more clarity. Like I said, it's like going to Costco, right? And then you come out with 35 things that you don't need, and none of them help you for dinner. Uh, Getting off of an app can feel the same way. It's like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? So we want to make sure that you're using them in a way that is super helpful for you. Um, that means that you're not experiencing that repeated micro rejection effect on your nervous system. Okay. Um, you might not necessarily even know that you're being rejected, but if you're opening your app and there are no matches popping up, right, it doesn't feel good. It begins to leave you feeling more anxious and discouraged. Uh, that's not because you're fragile. That's because your brain is responding to an environment that is full of unpredictability and uncertainty, and our brains don't like that. So I want to shift something in your mind today, okay? Apps are not judges of your worth, okay? Apps are tools. And tools work best when you decide how you're going to use them. All right. So we're going to do a bit of that. But before we do that, I want to talk for a second about the fact that if you are somebody who has been divorced, or if you're in your 30s or 40s, you're dating later in life, right? Your experiences may be different than anybody else's. You bring in more life experiences, more emotional intelligence, just because your brain is more developed and you've lived through more scenarios, right? And tend to bring in much clearer boundaries because you know what you are willing to do and not willing to do. And boundaries are about yourself, not about other people. Um, if we think that boundaries sound like you can't speak to me that way, that's control. A boundary is I'm not going to stay here and listen to this. That's a boundary. We are the only ones who cross our boundaries. Okay. So you might also bring in some grief, fear, anger, hope, all of those kinds of things. If you're parenting, you get a whole gold medal all into yourself because trying to schedule time to date within all of that is incredibly difficult. Okay. Um, Here's the truth around dating later in life. You do not have to be a healed individual. Okay. A healed individual is That's a commercial term. Okay. None of us are fully healed. Some of us have more skills than others um, to begin to be able to navigate things a little bit better. But we all have a past. And so you may have kind of figured out some things about your past, figured out more about who you are, feel a little bit better in your life. And that's great. I actually encourage that. But if you don't feel healed, it's okay. um, the other thing about that is that if you can learn to be okay by yourself, then you're not going to tolerate behavior that's any less than what you would give yourself. I hope that makes sense to everybody. If you can take yourself to dinner and be fine and people watch or read a book and enjoy your time, right? And give that to yourself, or if you can take yourself to the movies, or if you can sit at home alone and figure out whatever it is you're going to do and feel good, okay? Then you're not going to accept anything less than that from somebody else. All right. Okay. So here's another exercise for you all. This is exercise to help you manage your apps, right? Okay. There are lots of different apps out there. So you can figure out which ones you want to use, but I want to do a little reset here. Okay. Um, again, being compassionate with yourself. And some people really prefer structured limits, and other people kind of prefer organic. That's okay. Uh, do this as you see fit. Um, write down one setting on your app that you might tighten up, an age range, a distance, some kind of other filter. This is going to certainly narrow your choices, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing. Um, too many choices sends our brains into overdrive. So, narrowing things down a little bit here. Beyond that, what's a time boundary? You might say, I'm not going to be on an app after 10 o'clock. I'm tired. My brain doesn't really work as well at that point, and so um, I'm not going to participate in apps after 10 o'clock. Or it may be 8 o'clock, whatever it is that you know yourself. Another thing might be that um, you're only going to spend X amount of time, 10 minutes on an app, so that your nervous system isn't feeling like it's overwhelmed. So one time boundary, something that helps you with that. And then one curiosity-based opener that you might feel comfortable using. This is a really good place to get some confidence. And most bad app conversations experience start with, like, hey, how was your weekend? Really kind of blah questions, right? Those aren't going to really take people many places a lot of the time. So, um, curiosity based, referencing something specific and inviting a response that shows actual interest. What are you actually like? Don't comment on something you're not necessarily interested in, right? And it also reduces the small talk fatigue. Lots of people talking about kind of benign things. So, examples of this: your photo of your trip to X place really caught my eye. What was your favorite part of that trip? Or what did you learn about yourself on that trip? Right? Um, you referenced liking live music. What's the best show that you've seen recently? those kinds of curiosity things. I think I have one more example in here. Yeah, you wrote that growth matters to you, right? And I was going to say, I think when you had said yes, that growth matters to you. What does growth look like to you in a real life setting, right? So that might be something that's important for you to be able to answer. All right. Any things that anybody wants to share there? Again, like I said, it's optional. Oh, um, but I'm certainly open to hearing anything. So. Nothing in the chat yet, so we'll come back if something pops up there. All right, so I want to be clear about safety, right? Safety first, always. Knowledge equals empowerment. Some of you may have lived some trauma history. Please avoid some self-shaming. I should have seen that. People manipulate hope, okay? I really want to be clear about that. When people are hopeful about entering into relationships, when people want to see the best in other people, we can wear masks really easily for about 90 days. And we'll talk about that kind of at the end. So I want to be clear that if you feel like you've been duped at some point, right? People manipulate hope. That's not necessarily on you. Everybody deserves safety. It's not about fear. It's about empowerment. And I talked about the scams earlier, and they have increased, unfortunately. An early video chat really helps make this clear that that's not what's happening, okay? And then no money transfers, ever, ever. No exceptions, okay? If someone makes you feel pressured with intimacy, secrecy, urgency, that's information. Remember that first question? What kind of information are we looking for? How does somebody make you feel during this encounter? What comes up for you when you're with this person? That whole idea of, oh, we just had butterflies. Your body doesn't know the difference between anxiety and excitement, truly. So that whole butterfly feeling, that might not necessarily be a good thing. Really, what you want when you're looking for somebody in a partner is somebody who makes you feel safe when you're with them. You don't have to be on guard. You don't have to have all of your spidey senses running at the same time, kind of thing. Okay. If you're feeling that way, that's information. Okay. All right. So I want to be clear that this is a really good list and it helps people decrease their cognitive load when they're going out for a date. Okay. So making sure that you're setting up a first meeting in a public setting. And I might emphasize that, like, you should do that for a few meetings, right? Please tell a friend where you're going. You can share your location with your friend. Take independent transportation until you recognize how you feel in somebody's presence. Independent transportation is really, really wise. If somebody is saying, oh, well, I'll just pick you up, it's fine, don't worry about it. Again, information, right? That's pressure. So making sure that when you're trying to be safe, if somebody is kind of pushing back against that, right? Um, again, information, curiosity. So it doesn't mean paranoia, it means self-care and respect. Um, time box the date and stick to it. Okay. Uh, I've got 2 hours for lunch on Sunday. And then, okay, well, our time is up. And so I really appreciate getting together with you, and then head out. Um, and then trust your gut. Like I said, that butterfly feeling doesn't necessarily mean it's good. So, um, kind of do a body scan when you're sitting with somebody. How does my body feel? Check in with yourself. All right. I would be doing you a disservice if we didn't talk about consent in 2026 here, right? If you're coming into a dating scene with some background with trauma, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn are real. Freeze is very much your body trying to figure out what it should do or if it should continue to stay in freeze because that is the safest thing. Okay. Um, so that's a real thing. Fawning, going into people pleasing, right? To keep yourself safe. These are all real reactions. We don't have to judge them. They simply are. Okay. Um, people with neurodiversity often need explicit verbal consent. So keeping that in mind, if you are somebody who's neurodivergent, or if you're looking at dating somebody who's neurodivergent, okay? Affirmative consent means clear, mutual, voluntary agreement shown through words or intentional actions. Silence is not consent, okay? Silence, again, could really mean that somebody's in freeze. So that's why we don't want to rely on silence as consent. Okay. And consent can be withdrawn at any point in time. All right. I want to make that very clear. Um, things may be going well for a while, and that's great. And then somebody is like, oh, no, this no longer feels great to me. Consent has just been withdrawn. Right. Um, that's okay. That's about that person. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's about you. All right. If you are somebody who's um, consenting for a little bit and then pulling it back because you're at a spot where doing anything more feels unsafe and somebody pushes against that, again, that's information. Okay. Pay attention to those types of things. I really want you to practice consent, not here. Practice in your mirror. Practice helps your body think that you're talking to someone if you're doing it in a mirror. Okay. You can also close your eyes and visualize that happening while you're talking about it, right? Here are some really good scripts around this. I like this, but I want to slow the pace down. I want to check in. Are you good with this? And then that's not right for me right now. Or yet, right? If you think that there will be a point in time where it is, again, you want to make sure that you aren't pushing against this or that somebody's not pushing back against what you're saying. And then I want to do X, Y, or Z. Do you? Um, so good things to practice. Um, you can normalize the awkwardness of consent, but uh, it gets even more awkward if you don't use consent, right? So consent's the better bet. Um, awkward is safe, and that's better than smooth and unsafe, right? So you want to emphasize with your date, partner, whomever, that clarity builds trust. Okay. If you are being unclear, then people don't know where that line is. You want to make sure that you're being upfront. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about attachment. I don't want to pathologize this. Okay. This is a nervous system response. All right. Pacing helps regulate your nervous system. Our tolerance for overstimulation is varied. All right. But our nervous systems are on the date. Some people pull away when closeness happens, right? When that grows. Some people seek reassurance. Some navigate both, depending. None of it's wrong. It's how people's nervous systems react. And again, if we can bring curiosity to this, right, instead of judgment, then we're at a better spot. They aren't flaws, okay? So one helpful rule here, if emotions speed up, right, slow down a behavior, okay? So if you got together with somebody on Friday and you got together again with them on Sunday, and by Sunday you're like, wow, I really like this person. Okay, hold up, slow down a little bit, right? Give it a week, then get back together with them. See what your central nervous system says about that. Are you still that excited about this person, or has something changed? So if your emotions speed up, slow the behavior down, okay? Let's see here. I've got some other examples here too. Some common anxious responses in dating, okay? Over-checking messages, assuming rejection or abandonment, over apologizing. These things are really common. Some gentle truths to kind of hold on here. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. Okay. You may not be getting all of the information you want. However, that doesn't necessarily mean danger. Okay. It's just uncertainty, and that's uncomfortable for some people. Again, their behavior is not connected to your worth. All right. It's not a verdict of your worth. That is on them. That's more information, right? And you do not have to earn being treated kindly. Okay. That should be an expected basic level. Being treated kindly. Calming strategies that kind of help around this, naming the feeling instead of fighting it. Grounding in the present. So taking a really good deep breath, looking around, breathing down into your belly when you have a good deep breath, looking around and naming things. I can see a lamp, I can see greenery outside, I can see my computer, those kinds of things that grounds you in the spot that you're in. And then delaying reactions. If something is has gotten your central nervous system on, right, like that, right? Taking a cooling off before responding is really helpful. You can do that in a couple of different ways, right? If you're texting, then just not replying right away. If you're in a space with somebody, you can simply say, oh, I've had a reaction to that. I'm going to need a minute. Let's talk about this, and then we can come back to that. Things like that. Okay. And making sure that you've got good friends in your circle that you can do some reality testing with here. All right. Okay. So let's talk about your app, right? Your dating profile. We do not want to get caught up in perfection. Okay. People, I think most people are looking for authenticity. Okay. It's really easy to lean towards perfectionism in an app. I think a lot of people are feeling very pressured to do that. Um, However, if you're looking for something authentic, you've got to lead with authenticity. Okay. So you want to lead with clarity, not with mystery. It isn't a riddle to solve, it's an invitation. You want to make it easy for the right people to recognize themselves here. You want to encourage clear photos that are recent. Okay. If you're using a 10-year-old photo, that's not authentic to who you are now. You want to make sure that your face is smiling and visible. Doing something that you actually enjoy doing, right? Do not put a picture of you with your friend's dog in on your app, right? On your profile. It's not your dog. Somebody's going to be like, "Where? Well, I thought you had a dog," and then you're going to have to backtrack. It's like, just be authentic. um, And then don't just use group photos, because then it's really hard for people to figure out like who you are, which person is showing up in each photo kind of thing. That's not a mystery. That's not a game. You don't want to go that route. It doesn't create attraction. Clarity creates attraction. Okay. You want to show your values in your profile, not just vibes, right? So instead of listing traits you want, show how you live. Okay. Instead of looking for somebody ambitious, right? I love building things. I love my career, my garden, my playlists, whatever it is. Um, I'd encourage you to mention a value. We wrote some of those things down at the beginning, right? Um, and then add a specific detail that might catch somebody. Okay. Um, Specific is magnetic. Generic is forgettable. Okay. Um, you want to be warm. Okay. Warm is better than impressive. Your goal is not to win the internet, it's to attract somebody who's aligned with you, right? Um, so you want to encourage being defensive. Or I want to encourage, sorry, I want to encourage you to be avoid being defensive. Saying things like no drama, don't waste my time. That says defensive right off. Okay. Talk about what you want instead of what you don't want. All right. And you want to avoid a resume. Um, Sarcasm is also not super helpful because it hides vulnerability. So, warmth, light humor, being real. Um, Authenticity attracts alignment. Performance attracts confusion. Okay. If you don't want to go the performance route, if you're really looking to date here, authenticity is going to be the better bet. Think of your profile less like a sales pitch, right? And more like a front porch light. You're not trying to attract everyone. You are trying to signal home to the right people, being safe, being authentic, being warm, being vulnerable. Okay. When you decide to meet up, it's an experiment, okay? So you want to be clear about what your pacing expectations are, right? If you are somebody who tends to date pretty frequently, you want to be upfront with that. If you are somebody who only has time on the weekends because you've got a busy life, you've got kids, or you've got a job that is, I don't know, at a different time slot than the person you're dating, whatever, right? You want to make sure that you're clear about what your pacing is. And then I beg of you to be kind to the dating community and please do not ghost. Okay. There are lots of things that you can say instead of just ghosting somebody, and we'll get to that. But as you match and meet up, the things to think about are, if your curiosity is piqued by getting together with this person, then that's somebody that you probably should see again. If you are neutral and kind of unsure, give it one more shot. And if curiosity is down and you're like, not my person, then kindly close. Okay. Here's an example. Nice meeting you. I didn't feel like this was a match, and I wish you best on your dating journey. Simple, clean, kind, gentle. Okay. All right. Some more boundaries things here. If texting begins to feel overwhelming within the apps, it's okay to say things like, I'm not much of an all-day texter, but I'm happy to connect after work. I respond best when I'm not in the middle of my day. I'll get back to you tonight. If somebody is pushing for exclusivity too soon, some good lines. I'm still getting to know you. I'm not ready to define this yet. I don't make decisions about exclusivity this early. Okay. And if you're unsure, I'm noticing I'm not sure where we stand. How are you feeling about things? I like clarity. Are you interested in continuing to explore this? If effort feels one-sided, I'm looking for something mutual. I'm not getting that right now, right? I'm not getting that feeling. Some statements for physical boundaries. I'm enjoying this, but I'm not ready to go further. I want to keep this at kissing for now. That's not for me. Short is powerful. You do not owe somebody a TED Talk to explain your physical boundaries. All right. Some closure scriptures after 1 to 3 dates. Again, clear and kind. I've enjoyed meeting you. I'm not feeling a romantic match. I'm going to step back, wishing you well. I appreciate the time we've spent. I'm not feeling the connection. Glad we met. You seem like a good person. I'm just not feeling the spark. I need to move forward. Those kinds of things. Those are clear. They're kind. It's not your job to figure out how somebody's going to take what you say, right? Your job is to be kind and clear. So those are all examples of how to do that. Ghosting is not kind, nor is it clear, because people don't actually know what's happened. Okay. If you've been ghosted, this is a nice way to kind of close things out. I haven't heard back, so I'm going to assume that this isn't moving forward. Take care. That's giving you your power back, right? Without any drama. You don't have to, what happened? Da, 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 da. Nope. I'm going to assume that this isn't going forward because I haven't heard from you. All the best. And then if somebody's inconsistent, I'm looking for steadiness. This feels unclear to me. I need consistency to feel comfortable. Again, keeping things about self, right? If somebody crosses a line, that comment does not sit well with me. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm going to end this conversation. Okay. And then I get that it can feel scary to say no, especially if history has taught you that no has not been safe. Okay. So starting small, practicing out loud, again, in the mirror. Your nervous system learns through repetition. You can start with things like when a server asks you if you want water. No, thank you. Little things, start in the little things and then build your way up. Again, for those of us, and I count myself in this group, if your emotions are intense, pause the behavior. You can still feel strongly and still move slowly. Both of those things can happen at once. Um, one of the signs of maturity is understanding that two things can happen at once, right? You can have big feelings and still move slowly. Boundaries don't ruin connection. They filter for people who can handle what your boundaries are, right? Dating is about meeting lots of different people, some of whom you will really match with and others whom you will not. And if you put a boundary out there about what you are willing to do or not willing to do, and somebody cannot keep with that, then that's more information. And you haven't ruined a connection. You have given yourself a gift in keeping yourself safe. Okay. Like I said, we cross boundaries. If you have parents or if you have kids, not parents, I want to really be clear about holding space for how complex that really is. Okay. You're dealing with lots and lots of different calendars and emotions and needs. It can be really tough. So please be gentle with yourself in that. Okay. Um, make sure that you have the emotional bandwidth to be dating at this point in time. Um, if you've got a lot going on in your life, dating can seem like a great idea. Actually, in actuality, it's actually pulling you out of the things that may need attention. It could be a distractor instead of complementing your life when things are really full. Okay. So, space and time for that complexity. Being gentle with yourself. What do you really need right now? Okay. All right. So, have not missed your window. Okay. There's no expiration date on connection. Um, healing and connection can coexist, right? This is the growth. Okay. Differentiation is recognizing that you are different from somebody else. Okay. And that has to happen in relationship. Otherwise, it's isolation. Those are two different things. So, differentiation can happen between parents and children. It can happen between partners. It can happen with friendships, but it has to happen in relationship. So that is a part of learning and growing. You don't have to know how to be differentiated with everybody at this point in your life to be able to date. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to give you a few rules. These come from a dating coach. There's a podcast listed. You can go listen to it if you want to. I think these are really wise rules to stick by, and I will tell you why. Um, date somebody for 3 months, just casual dating. Okay. I mentioned masks earlier. People can hang on to masks for a good 90 days. Okay. So dating somebody for 90 days, 3 months, actually helps you get to the point where masks begin to fall away. And then you begin to see who somebody is for their real self, right? If there's somebody who has an anger issue, You're probably going to start seeing it in that 3rd month, somewhere in there. If somebody is inconsistent, they may be able to be consistent for a little while and then it starts to drop off. It also weeds out those people who are only interested in sex. Like I said, sex positive, you can have sex with all the people you want to. I do not care. You probably shouldn't start a relationship that way because you're going to miss red flags that could be present. Because once you start doing that, the neurochemicals in your brain begin to act like crack. And you can't see things after that. So please try not to start a relationship in that way. Just safer sex if you're going to have all of the sex you want. Great. Let's see here. You can date a bunch of people at the same time, especially if you're not getting physical with them, right? You are kind of checking to see who people are, what traits people have, who do you like, who do you feel safe with, those kinds of things. You can date a lot of people at the same time. No kissing, no cuddling, no sex for those first 3 months. Again, brain starts to go to crack when those things happen. No moving in together for a year. You really need to see somebody in all the seasons of their life for a year before you move in with them. If you move in with somebody and you have only known them for 6 months, right? You may have no idea how they are on their birthday. I know a person who gets incredibly depressed on their birthday because it seems that nobody can ever please this person with a birthday celebration. You might want to know that before you move in with someone, right? Somebody may have seasonal affective disorder. Probably should know that before you move in with someone, but you won't know that until we get to the season where it would be happening, right? You want to make sure that you know how somebody is when they're sick. It could be that they don't want to be, they don't leave me alone. It could be that they want all the help in the world. You should know that before you move in with someone. So making sure that you have all the seasons of life covered in that first year. All right. Okay. This is the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or ask them. And my email is swondra, S as in Stephanie, WONDRA, @cascadehealth.org. And you can email me questions. I'm happy to answer them that way. But I really do appreciate your time and your energy, and I hope that you've gained some things out of the presentation today, and all the best. You're so welcome, you guys. Take care. Mhm.